Alright, guys. It's my time. I'm gonna do what every other liberal does. I'm gonna react to PragerU.
Fans, before we start, remember that you can get hundreds of free education
So,
videos for
I don't
all
even know
ages
what this
at
video is. Never seen this video before. Where literally, I just saw Crash Course, but apparently this is Cash Course. So I'm hoping this is gonna be like a Cash Course style video. So let's see what PragerU's got for us today.
Look at the same thing, say a painting, and come away with completely different ideas about what it means.
Okay.
It's
All right.
so moving. The artist is a
Yep.
genius.
What's so genius about randomly throwing paint on a canvas?
Art and fashion can be deeply interpretive, but even things
Sure.
like economics have people split with different
Yeah.
opinions.
Sure.
There's a great divide over what seems like simple issues to most, like taxation, monetary policy, and government regulation. These
Yeah.
differences can be separated into various schools of economic thought.
All right.
There are four
let's
main
see.
schools: classical, Keynesian, monetarism, and Austrian. Each takes a
Not
unique
bad.
approach
Not
to
bad.
driving value creation, trade, and consumption in an economy. Let's take a closer
Am I gonna
look at
disagree with
each.
anything here?
The first is the classical school.
Oh, here we go.
Credited to Adam Smith and his classic
Alright.
work, The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. Smith observed that the government played a large role in the various European nations around him at the time, including his own Great Britain. Trade was highly regulated and wealth was fixed mainly to the top level of society.
All right.
This left
Feudalism.
most people to suffer under high taxes, inflation, and government corruption.
Smith believed a better alternative was minimal government intervention and more individual autonomy, allowing markets to operate more freely. This, in turn, would lead to economic growth that spreads a nation's wealth to more of its citizens.
Right. Yeah.
Let's put this idea into practice. Say an entrepreneur has started a t-shirt business, but no one is buying them. Classical economists would handle this issue with as little government intervention as possible.
Right.
They would instead promote innovation and creativity on the part of the entrepreneur, such as
Redesigning the
Yeah, for the most
t-shirt
part.
to set them apart from the
For t-shirts.
competition.
Yeah.
Be free to choose your own ideas.
Sometimes
to
we'll
drive
offer
up sales.
like subsidies and stuff, but
Okay, but what if I want the government?
for like clothes, yeah, that applies.
Government? That's the other guy.
that other guy is John Maynard Keynes, who originated the Keynesian school of economic thought. This school focuses on aggregate demand, which is the total demand for goods and services.
Yeah, I genuinely
Keynesians
don't think there's going to be
believe
enough like
aggregate demand
analysis
as
here to
opposed
disagree with anything.
supply
This looks
is
like a
the
pretty
main
decent video.
driving force of all economic activity. When an economy slows down, it's the government that needs to intervene to increase demand. So, if demand for the t-shirt company is low, Keynesians would suggest
A change in government fiscal policy to encourage more buyers.
fiscal policies could include government-paid discounts to certain groups or at certain times. Or they could include subsidies for clothing companies to boost that particular industry
Yep,
with
there
the
you go.
intention to drive down t-shirt prices and increase demand.
Yeah, that would be the main way we're driving down costs, right? Or they're driving up demand is through subsidies.
Another point of view is
Well, it
monetary,
doesn't really drive up
which
demand, but it
originates
just
from
helps you to
famed
like deal with the
economist Milton Friedman.
lessening of
Like
demand.
the classical school, monetarists believe government economic intervention should be limited, but when needed, they believe that monetary policy, which influences the money supply, is more impactful to economic activity than fiscal policy. When there's more money in circulation, people tend to spend more, whereas when there's less money in supply,
Right.
people will tend to save. This expands or contracts the economy, changing
Well,
the demand for goods and
the
services.
higher end.
In the case of the t-shirt company,
You don't really got that
monetarists
option as a
might
poor person.
suggest
Increase the money supply.
Nice.
this could lead to more spending on things like t-shirts and other clothing.
Right.
However,
We caution
Inflation.
against increasing the supply too quickly, which leads to inflation.
that's because if people have more money to spend, but t-shirt prices skyrocket, the purchasing power of their money actually decreases, since
Right,
it won't
yeah.
buy as much as it did
Yep, there it
before.
is. Inflation.
Exactly.
Finally, we have the Austrian school.
All right, I don't know
which
about
originated
much about
with
this.
Karl
Let's see.
Menger. Like the classic or monetarism school, this school also leans toward less government in the market. They were the first to recognize diminishing marginal utility, the idea
okay.
that the value of a
Okay.
thing decreases
I know that
as
term.
you gain more of that thing. For example, having one hammer to build a house is highly valuable, but having 5,
Yeah.
10, or 50, not so much. They also observed that
Yeah, like that 49 to the
Prices can be
50th is not as
not
valuable as
just
that first,
strict supply
right?
and demand, but also subjective factors like personal preferences.
This includes things like brand recognition, where a product's produced, and what materials are used.
Sorry, I'm probably making
The
noise on my
Austrian
desk, just
economist
messing with
might
stuff.
suggest that the t-shirt
I'm not
company
used to just
changed
watching
its
videos
marketing
and
focus by
reacting.
Clearly highlighting the benefits of the product.
Since people make decisions based on their own interests, the
I haven't had to
seller
pause yet. This is great.
that the t-shirt, say, uses Egyptian cotton or makes you look more attractive. This strategy uses a product's added value instead of its price to attract a consumer's interest, which could lead to increased sales.
And you'll look good, and you'll look better, and you'll look.
With a topic as complicated as
Is this from
economics,
PragerU?
it's not surprising that there are many different views on how it all works. These 4 schools are
I
just
kinda wanna look at the
a few
comments of
the
these.
many out there.
I wonder if
And each school's
there's no way
recommendation
people
has
got
its
stuff to
trade-offs
say about this.
depending on the situation. With a better understanding of these schools, you'll be better able to recognize
I was
the
hoping to
economic
pause
trends
20
at
times in
work
this 6-minute
in the
video,
economy
but
around you.
Now this, you have to agree, is genius. No, wait, come back.
right, yeah.
Watch
Yeah, I
more
mean,
at PragerU
that was like exceptionally not bad. Right. Right, but like, hold on. I think all but the, yeah. Yeah, I mean this. I mean, what do you expect in a PragerU? Like, they're not gonna like some of these ideas by just like inherently, like outright. But, true. Why? I mean, maybe we got other videos on like different formats of an economy, or like, hold on, let's see, how do I go back to the play? Oh, it's right here. I don't ever use playlists in this. Let's see, measuring economic performance, artificial intelligence and fraud. That one sounds kind of interesting. Inflation and your money. That one's probably gonna be pretty good. No. Commodities. And that would probably touch on it a little bit. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it won't. I'm not seeing any. The roll of prices. Yeah, there's literally, it's just like all capitalism, I guess, which is like fine, but I want to get a more balanced diet, you know. I don't even know how to find like their good videos. Like, what would that be under? It wouldn't be under the kids. Short documentaries, probably not. Oh wait, what is a marathon?
Do you
An
know
hour
what's
and 20
going on
minutes.
in your kid's school? If not,
Uh-oh.
now would be a
What's
good
wrong with the
time to take a
education
look.
system? All right, hold on, I'm gonna pull
Here's
on
what you're
sitting
likely
for
to
this one because I
find.
know I'm gonna have a lot of disagreements here.
According to the education establishment, the purpose of public education is no longer just to teach the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is to
Okay.
awaken students to the fact that they live in a country that has
Ouch.
been, remains, and will probably always be racist.
Okay.
Here's how the American Association of School Administrators, AASA, recently described its mission. At a time of obscene inequities, merely trying to compensate is not enough. AASA's work must go further and become actively anti-racist.
Okay.
Being
All right.
anti-racist
see where we're
sounds
going.
simple and laudable. Treat everyone the
Go.
same. A version of the golden rule. What could be wrong with that? Nothing. Except that's not what the educational elite means by anti-racism. Anti-racism, in its current formulation, does not mean equal treatment of others.
Sure. Right.
It is an all-encompassing ideology that demands that white people
Intersectionalism.
accept that their behavior is either implicitly or explicitly racist, and has been for at least 400 years.
Okay.
The catch-22 here is that to say you're not racist only proves how racist you really are. That is, you
Alright,
are
let's
so
let him here
racist
explain
you
this
don't
one.
even know it. And if this accusation upsets you, that's proof of your white fragility. Education
on.
Week's Classroom Q&A blog tells teachers
What?
that, as Ibram X. Kendi, the
oh my
author
God.
of How to Be an
What?
Anti-Racist Everyone
This is
the
gonna be
Same,
really hard to go.
a version of the golden rule. What could be wrong with that? Nothing. Except
I gotta hear this again.
that's not what the educational elite means by anti-racism. Anti-racism, in its current formulation, does not mean
It's okay. All right. So what is anti-racism, right? When people talk about anti-racism, what are they talking about, right? It's this idea that like being complicit in a system that has like we're specifically usually talking about like an implicit bias side of things, not like an explicit bias, because obviously like we've ruled out like redlining, like most of these like by law things. I forgot my camera's over here. I keep looking this way, but that's where my where was I? What was I even just saying? Anywho, it's not basically what they're saying is it's not enough to just simply be complicit and not racist yourself. Like if you're surrounded by people that are racist or have tendencies to have like implicit bias against certain racial groups, minorities, like gay people, Jewish people, whatever you want to say, you ought to correct that, right? It's like making a prescriptive, like you ought to like hold people account around you for racism, right? So what they're saying is they're kind of almost hitting on like a reverse racism thing here. So I kind of think that's where we're going to go.
All-encompassing ideology that demands that white people accept that their behavior is either implicitly or explicitly racist.
Oh, so they're saying that every possible action you can make has to be either implicitly or explicitly racist. Is that how they end up with that conclusion at the end?
Is either implicitly or explicitly racist, and has been for at least 400 years. The catch-22 here is that to say you're not racist only proves how racist you really are. That is, you are so racist you don't even know it.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And if this
I've got
accusation
no idea.
upsets you, that's proof of your white fragility. Education Week's Classroom Q&A blog.
No one wants to be
tells teachers
racist,
that-
right? I mean, it should
That's
offend you.
Ibram X. Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist,
Well, not
would say,
nobody. I'm
"There
sure people
is
are
no
out
not
there that want to be.
racist. There is only racist and anti-racist. Your
Right,
silence
right.
favors the status quo and the violently oppressive harm it does
That's exactly
to
what I
black
just said.
and brown folk everywhere.
Yeah.
What Kendi is saying is,
And I'm not a Kendi guy. Like I don't really like most of the stuff that he says, but like that's literally exactly what I said. Like they're not saying that you have to go punch somebody on the streets that you saw like not hold the door for a black guy or something. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not saying that you need to go out and like attack these people that are racist. All they're saying is that like within your reach, your like friend group and your like immediate access people, that if there are racist people that you should probably like want to hold them to account. I keep looking over there when I'm talking. Regardless. Yeah, you shouldn't be complicit in this thing. And this is what he's saying, like your silence favors the status quo. Like it's the same thing as like being a bystander when a kid's getting into a fight. Like you are not simply neutral, you are almost on the side of the guy getting in the fight, right? I mean, you are complicit in the action. Therefore, I mean, I don't understand how where are they going to go with this? Because do they disagree that you can only be racist or anti-racist? I don't know.
does to black
I guess we're
and
gonna
brown
see.
folk everywhere. What Kendi is saying is, if you don't voice active agreement with him, you are a racist. And if you treat people equally, regardless of race, you're also a racist.
Hold on, wait. Let me write down what he said.
Anti-racists embrace racial discrimination as people equally, regardless of race.
All right, let's write this down. If you treat people equally, regardless of race. Oh.
You're also a racist. Anti-racists.
Oh wait, what was that
embrace-
first part? You're also a racist. If you treat people equally, regardless of race, you're also a racist. Scene color, right? Or not scene color. What was that? Why does it not let
regardless of
me?
race, you are a
Oh,
racist.
there we go.
And if you treat
Wait,
people
wait, fuck.
equally, active agreement with him,
If you don't voice active agreement with me, you're a racist. If you don't voice active agreement. So what is their active agreement here? Are they literally just saying the fact that you are not willingly stepping up to people in your confines, that you are racist because of that? I mean, I'm not going to say I completely disagree. I mean, I wouldn't say that you're racist for that, but you're complicit in the action, right? But he's not saying that if you don't agree with me, he's just saying that if you are willfully sitting there while, like, say you're in a friend group and one of your friends is bullying a black kid or something, right? Or bullying a gay kid or whatever minority you want to pick. If you, like, don't say anything and you just let that happen, you are almost as guilty, right?
You are a racist. And
So I didn't even know I wrote that down because that was
regardless of race.
Whatever.
You're also a racist. Anti-racist.
And that one is that. I mean, you could say that if you'd like, if you treat people equally regardless of. It's just basically hitting on this idea that, like, egalitarianism versus equality, or what's the two that people, equity versus equality. Kind of hitting at, like, this dude is just straight staring down my soul. The hitting on that, like, if you treat people accordingly, there are still going to be these discrepancies because, like, we don't all exist. Like, there's that picture, everybody knows what I'm talking about, of the three kids standing on the same size box, and one of them still can't see over because he's too short, and then they get, you know, equality is like, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe equity is the tiered boxes for each, you know, tailored to each individual person, and then the equality was everybody having the same box.
As long as it's done on their terms. As Kendi has said, the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination.
Not
I
discrimination.
understand how wrong this might sound. It turns the Martin Luther King concept of racial equality on its head.
Not necessarily. Wait, hold on. Let's say it again.
The remedy to past discrimination is present.
We've all heard this. Right? So it's not the idea that you inherently, like, are discriminatory against white people, right? And it's not even necessarily hitting on the idea of, like, reparations. It's just saying that, like, you can't expect the black people in this country, especially the ones that haven't, you know, aren't, like, newly immigrated or whatever. You can't expect them to compete in modern society the way that they would be able to had they had the ability for, you know, like, what, 206 years to build up generational wealth prior to being emancipated. So the point is, the whole point that we're all hitting on here, and I've used this analogy 100 times now, writing in my psychology classes, sociology, like, all that stuff. Like, if you are playing, like, imagine you're just playing a game of Monopoly with a friend, right? And this is a competitive game. You want to win this game really bad. And so he's reading the rules. You never played Monopoly before, and, you know, I'm a white guy right here, but pretend I'm a black guy, and my friend over here is a white guy, and he's reading out the rules, and he's, like, explaining everything. Everything seems normal. Cool. I'm understanding the rules. And then imagine he's like, oh, because I'm white, by the way, I get 206 rolls, and then you'll get to roll, right? Do you think you'll be able to catch up in that game? Like, obviously not. So, like, the whole point there is, like, in that situation, that sentence is true. Like, the only remedy for past discrimination, those 206 rolls, is probably to give them 206 rolls to get back up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is very obviously the case, given, like, good charitability, what exactly he's hitting on there versus what they're actually trying to say that he's hitting on.
Concept of racial equality on its head. But that's exactly the point. Lorena Germain, who chairs the Committee on Anti-Racism for the National Council of the Teaching of English, makes this clear. At the height of the recent urban unrest, Germain wrote that arsonists should serve as a model for teachers. Educators, what are you burning? Your white-centered curriculum? The school's racist policies? Your racist-ass principal? The funding for police and schools versus counselors? What are you burning?
Who did you say this was? I know her name, but who is this?
Germain wrote that arsonists makes this clear.
What is it? Chair of the Committee on
Anti-Racism.
Anti-Racism. Okay.
The Teaching of English makes this clear.
The National Council on Teaching English.
At the height of the recent urban unrest, Germain wrote that arsonists.
What do you expect someone like this to say, though?
For teachers.
Like,
educators,
I don't expect RFK to, like,
your
advocate for seat rules, right?
The school's racist policies.
What are they going to say about that? Let's see.
Principal. The funding for police and schools versus counselors. What are you burning? Germain's call to commit arson may have been metaphorical, but her call to get rid of the traditional school curriculum is not.
I guess I'm missing the context there. I don't know what like event he's talking about there, where there must have been like some event that happened.
Education tells teachers that The whole Western canon is rife with horrible stories and atrocities of who we are as people of color. For their part, the National Committee on Social Studies has promised to flood our children with countermessages until there is no racial inequality in economic opportunity,
Sure.
no racial inequality in
What, like-
education, no racial inequality in incarceration rates, and no
So are we gonna
brutality
get in? Like, are we actually gonna get a like rebuttal to why this is like so harmful? Or are we just gonna say that like,
If that
oh, like,
sounds to you a
you know,
lot
it might
more
not be a
like
good idea to
political
like introduce our kids to
indoctrination
race?
than
Like,
you would be right. New York State now encourages teachers to incorporate current events, even if they are controversial, into instruction, and to utilize
Alright,
tools
sure.
that encourage students to engage with difficult topics,
Right.
power, privilege, access, and equity, constructively. We might all wish that as cultural and political polarization reaches into more and more areas of American life, schools could remain an apolitical oasis where children can learn to read, write, and develop skills.
What
of
did he just say?
socialization. Oasis where children can learn to read.
children?
Schools could remain an apolitical oasis where children can learn to read.
Children? What is he
Schools could
saying?
remain an apolitical oasis where children can learn to read.
I'm pretty sure he said children.
write, and develop skills of socialization. But if that's what you want for your
Are they
children,
playing checkers?
then just know that anti-racist educators think that you are part of the problem. According to a
Wait,
writer
why am
for
I part of the
teaching
problem?
You, your children, then just know.
Because I'm not. Because I'm
that's what you
complicit.
want
Like the
for
same
your
thing.
Children, then just know.
God, I don't. It's 5 seconds ain't
Children
enough.
learn to read, write, and develop skills of socialization. But if that's what you want for your children, then just know that anti-racist educators think that you are part of the problem. According to a writer for Teaching Tolerance, a project of the Southern Poverty Law Center,
I mean, I would say that you probably have a responsibility to society to like inform your child on like why that certain minorities might have a different relationship with the country than than we do or whatever. Like, I'm not understanding why that's like inherently a
Anti-racist
negative thing.
educators
Maybe they'll
recognize
say something though.
that schools today are doing exactly what they were built to do in this country: exclude, silence, erase, promote white supremacy. An
see where this
anti-racist
is going.
approach to schooling could very well mean an ending to schools as we know them. That is certainly true. The National Council on the Teaching of English
What?
insists this promote
Say that
white
again?
supremacy. An anti-racist approach to schooling could very well mean an ending to schools as we know them. That is certainly true. The National Council on the Teaching of English insists
not sure.
there is no apolitical classroom. The educational
Sure.
elite has a
But that's
very
like
clear
we're hitting on the
lesson
exact same
plan.
thing. We're hitting on the anti-racist versus racist
If
thing.
you're
Like
okay with
there
it,
is no there's no.
Send
It's black or
Johnny
white,
and Jennifer
right?
off to school with a glad heart. If you're not okay with it, better talk to the principal.
But is that like all we're
Or
gonna say
get
here?
ready with a plan B. I'm Max.
Are we gonna get? Oh, okay,
Senior
perfect. I
Fellow
think we're about to get a
Manhattan
different
Institute
speaker.
for PragerU University.
This dude's making me creeped out. Making me creeped out. He's creeping me out.
Have you heard of the 1619?
Oh God, here we go.
It was published by the New York Times in August of 2019. It
What an
won
interesting
the Pulitzer
facial hair.
Prize for commentary in
Okay.
2020. Its
Wait, who is he?
thesis, the
What's he
Unitzer
got? What's he got?
Prize for Commentary
Associate
in
Professor,
2020.
Political Science.
It won the Pulitzer
All right,
Prize for
based.
Commentary
What is
in 2020. Its
associate?
thesis,
What is an
the United
associate?
States was founded in 1619 when the first slave was brought to North America. Wait, that brings up some questions. What happened to 1776? To July 4th?
We haven't gotten there yet.
The
We're at
Declaration of
1619?
Independence.
We haven't
George
got there yet.
Washington, Thomas Jefferson,
Still
and
ain't got
James
there yet.
Madison.
None of those have even
According
been
to the
born yet.
1619 Project, the
Man, actually, that
founding
might not be
fathers
true.
pushed
I
for all
don't know when
that
they're all
life,
born.
Liberty and the pursuit of happiness stuff to protect their slave holdings. Independence from England, that was just a smokescreen.
Bro, that doesn't
To them,
exist yet.
Everything that's wrong with America is tied to her original sin of slavery, from segregation to traffic jams. Yes, traffic jams. For
I mean, the scars are there,
1619 Project
right?
authors, racism is not a part of the American experience. It is the American experience. Is this true? Let's look at 3 of the project's
I hate the
major
1619
claims.
project, by the way,
1,
guys. I
preserving
mean, I don't hate it.
slavery
Like,
is
I
the
understand
real
what they're
cause of the
hitting at
American
there, but
Revolution. If you ask the
all of
founders
the
why
shit
no
that they
longer wanted to be a British
put
colony,
out with
they would have given you a long
the
list
original
of
document or
reasons.
whatever, all of it just
Taxation
sounded
without
so bad, and I don't even know how it got
conflicts over
past
debts
like
from the French and Indian
whoever's
War.
publishing these
And the
things.
Stamp Act would be
But-
just a few. Probably most important. was
Wait,
the
let's say
war.
again.
and the Stamp.
He says taxation without representation, and then names the Stamp Act. Conflicts over debts from the French and Indian War. Is that even, like, necessarily true, though?
Stamp Act would be just a few. Probably most important was the burning desire to be
probably
free, to chart their own destiny as a
but like
sovereign nation.
the main like debts we owed to
Protecting
France
slavery.
come after the
Slavery
revolution,
was not
right? They're
under
like
threat from the British. In fact,
during
Britain
the revolution.
didn't free the slaves in its overseas colonies until 1833. 53 years later,
true,
after the Declaration of Independence.
right?
Yes, the subject of slavery was hotly debated at the Constitutional Convention, but that was after the war was won. 2. Slavery made America rich. Slavery made some Americans rich, true enough. Eli Yale, for example, made a fortune in the slave trade.
Sure.
He donated money.
I know,
and
I get what they're
land
saying.
for the
Not everybody
university that is
sold
named after him.
slaves, right?
But the institution
But that
of slavery
doesn't-
didn't make America rich. In fact, the slave system badly slowed the economic development of half.
Aren't these the same people that like say the wealthy are to overtax because they pay all the money in this country? The idea that if you have, these collective, not everybody obviously, but these like one in every town slave owner that has a fuck ton of money, like, what do you mean that doesn't have help the economic development? Like, who do you think the investors were back then? Obviously, we didn't have a rudimentary investment on Wall Street, but like what?
Just 1 year before the Civil War began, the South had only 1/6 as many factories as the North. Almost 90% of the country's skilled, well-paid laborers and professionals were based in the North.
At and Shay, baby.
Railroads.
Thank you.
Manufacturing.
Let's see if I got anything to
were
disagree with here.
concentrated in the North. The South was an economic
Right.
and the cost of abolishing slavery was
Why
immense.
though? Why? What other industry did they have? It's like when you rely so much on a single method to like a single cash crop to make all your money. That's not sustainable. It's like, why did the North, like, is it just because they chose? It's like they just like the North better, so they just chose to build all the shit over there? Or is that because that they had a more what word am I looking for here? More varied workforce, right? Or like more varied economy, not even a workforce. Like they are producing more than just one thing. So if that one thing, has like problems, or if there's like a whole civil war, a whole disagreement of that whole core topic in the country, like what do you think's gonna happen?
In terms of dollars, Lincoln borrowed billions.
That's strange.
The South was an economic backwater. And
Like
the
what is the
cost of
implication here? That's
abolishing
all I want to know. What is the implication there? That like they were trying to punish the South for having slaves, so they didn't, or he's using that to explain that like the South was not like as strong as it like people might try to say it is, to counteract the fact that like the North was supposed to be super well advanced over them or whatever, Civil War stuff.
Lincoln
But
borrowed
I don't know.
billions to pay for it, but also in terms of human life. 360,000 Union soldiers died in order to free 4 million slaves. That works out to about 1 soldier in blue for every 10 slaves freed. It's hard to look at that butcher's bill and conclude that the nation turned a profit from slavery. And many things have happened since
Turned a
1865.
profit. Why did they? What? Hold on. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I need a new tab. Can I just like? Oh, I just do this. Hold on. (1793). 1793 is when the cotton gin is invented. The idea that this is not a profitable business at this point in the country is ridiculous. Like, this is what the South economy was founded on, essentially. I mean, like, in North Carolina, like, where I live, and, like, a couple other states that were, like, later to secede, weren't as heavy reliant on slave labor as, like, the deep South states. Like, I think it was, like, Louisiana and Alabama were, like, the main ones. Or, Louisiana wasn't even purchased at this time. When is Louisiana even purchased? I think it's like the 1800s, isn't it? But yeah, it's like the deep states. 1803 acquisition. Okay, so not quite, but
900%, and our national
it's
GDP
silly.
has increased 12,000%. Slavery did not make America rich.
What?
3. Racism, slave 100%, and our national GDP has increased 12,000%.
I'm sure that the Civil War doesn't even mark the like highest increase, like rate of increase at all. Nearly, I'm sure that there's like the 1940s probably blow that out of the water. Like,
slavery did not make America rich.
Does that mean that like World War I didn't make America rich because we got absurdly rich off of World War II?
Racism is an unchangeable part of America. This argument is more philosophical than scholarly, but it undergirds the entire 1619 project. It's also pernicious because it suggests that the United States is an inherently racist country that can't.
No, I wouldn't say
overcome its flaws.
inherently.
Yet that's
but
exactly what it's done. Today, America is the most successful multiracial country in history. The only white majority country to
Right.
elect a black president twice. Of course,
What does that
progress has
mean?
not always been smooth. There have been terrible setbacks. But to compare American attitudes about race today to America 100 years ago, let alone to 1619, is absurd. Here's a fact that should be better known. 2 million black Africans have come to America as legal immigrants.
wait.
Better
Let's see
known.
the chart. 1920. We're
1619
halfway up the
is
race
absurd.
chart.
Here's a
Halfway up
fact
the
that
race
should
chart
be
in
better known.
1920.
2 million black Africans
Nitpick,
have come
but-
to America as legal immigrants from countries like Nigeria
Right.
in the last 50 years
Mm-hmm.
and have become one of the most successful groups in the country.
Right, because
Why
they
would
weren't
these folks move to what is
disenfranchised.
often called
Oh my god. Oh my god. They just solved their own issue. Let's hear that one again.
from countries like
Wait,
Nigeria,
hold on.
1519 is absurd. Here's a fact that should be better known. 2 million black Africans have come to America as legal immigrants from countries like Nigeria in the last 50 years and have become one of the most successful groups in the country.
Okay.
Why would these-
First off. You might think that like inherently this is like silly because like, you know, like there's a lot of like poor in general, like Africa is per capita more poor than the US, right? That like there's like this stereotype that like a lot of poor people come from Africa. So it's like, oh, but why would they? You know, like, oh, it's a decent comparison because, you know, like they're poor over here, they're poor over there sometimes, you know, like you can compare them. But like people that are able to immigrate, this is what always blows my mind when people like talk about immigration is like they seem to, well, Mexico's different because we're like landlocked to them essentially, right? Or like any of the other countries that are like straight landlocked to us, Canada, are going to be different. But like talking about Asian, or like, I mean, the stereotype is mainly Asian immigration, right? But like any of these like far away country immigration are inherently going to bring you your more talented, more educated people because like it's expensive to fly across the country and move to a new country, right? You're not doing that if you're struggling to find drinking water in Zimbabwe, or I don't even know what a poor, like an example of like a poor place in Africa would be, but like, you know.
Folks move to what is often called an evil, racist country.
Like, so no, it's no wonder like you're selecting for a higher tier of person when you're pooling immigrants. That's why I mean, look at all the immigrants that are far away countries. They're all going to be measuring every other, you know, racial group in this country. That's just how like immigration naturally like develops because it's not free.
It's also only fair to note that while blacks have heroically fought for our rights, often against great odds, we haven't done it alone. A vast number of decent whites have also advanced the cause of racial equality. To cite one of countless examples, the U.S. Senate that passed the landmark Civil Rights Act in 1964 contained 98 whites and 2 men of color, and they were Asian. The Great Black...
Wow.
to 98 whites and 2 men of color, and they were Asian.
Why? Oh, and they were Asian. Never mind. Fuck, I didn't even see that. Oh my god. Amazing. What? Because there was no black people in that Congress? That means that like it had to have been a bunch of like good feeling white people. Like that's not necessarily the
Washington,
case.
Martin Luther King never lost faith in America's
I gotta
promise
calm down. I gotta
that
calm
all
down.
people are created equal. None of them believed that racism was America's defining characteristic.
I like that
They
little
were
text.
right.
That was kind of cool.
Shortly after the 1619
They got some catchy
project was
editing.
published, a group of
I don't know if catchy,
distinguished
flashy.
historians, almost all on the left, wrote a public letter condemning the work. They called it a displacement of historical understanding by ideology. They were right too. I'm Wilfred Riley, Associate Professor of Political Science at Kentucky State
Thank you,
University
Wilfred Riley.
for Prager University.
This video was made possible through a generous grant from Dr. Bob.
What kind of future do we have if we destroy our past? Has anyone who has put
What's the topic?
Foundation.
What kind of future do we have
Oh, that was just
if
the
we
start.
destroy our past? Has anyone
All right,
who
we're
has
gonna talk about
brought down a
statues.
statue
Oh,
of
yep.
Churchill, Lincoln, or Columbus thought to ask themselves this question?
How are we destroying? That's my first question. How are we destroying the past by taking down statues? Is anyone advocating because we take down a statue of Bedford Forrest? What was his name? The silly statue down in I think it's New Orleans. He's like riding the horse and it looks so goofy that they were talking about taking down or whatever. By taking that down, are we advocating the erasure of that history? Or like, I mean, the 1619 project wants to highlight that part of our country, right? Like where does this idea come from that because we want to get rid of certain statues that, by the way, are the right of whoever lives and pays taxes in the city. I mean, the city pays for these things. They have the right to take these down if they want to. You can petition if you want to, and they might listen to you, but you got no right to, like, keep a statue up just because there's historical significance to it, right? And that disregards the fact, like, how are we getting rid of it? How are we erasing the history just by getting rid of the statue? If we don't if that doesn't represent who we are as a country, that doesn't mean that we're getting rid of it and just hiding that evidence. Like, what?
Merely foolish and unfair. It's dangerous. Consider what the statue destroyers are.
This is a British guy. I'm gonna get on his ass.
They are saying that people in history should have known what we know. That's tantamount to saying they should have known the future.
What?
This is, of course, absurd. Yet more and more.
Because they didn't read the minds of current social or society. Is that what he's implying there? That like they should have known that we were gonna be not a slave society anymore, or like what's so funny is like what even statues are we mad about right here? I just want to. I'm sure you look into the context of some of these statues, and I'm sure that the mass majority of us would agree that they probably don't represent the U.S. anymore, right?
Point of history is not to learn lessons from it, but
like we don't need. That's so funny because we don't need statues on the city sidewalk that like get in the way, that like everybody trips over, that like birds shit on. Like we don't need these to remind us of like these parts of our history. We have like libraries and documentation. Like we have like this is all recorded history.
Preordained left-wing conclusions about such ill-defined concepts as social justice, equity, and tolerance.
Ill-defined.
Apart from breeding ignorance, this kind of education invites the student, child really, to be judge, jury, and executioner over issues that they, and increasingly their teachers, know little or nothing about. Because no one has bothered to teach them the nuance, complexity, and context that is history. It also breeds arrogance.
Sure.
I know things these people...
What does that even mean?
Choose that they, child really, to be judge, jury, and executioner over...
What is the alternative? We should tell kids how to feel about this? Is that propaganda?
Issues that they, and increasingly their teachers,
like,
know little...
The whole point of these classes is to be like, listen, this is what happened. Decide how you feel about it.
Or nothing.
We're Americans!
Because no one has bothered to teach them the nuance, complexity, and context that is history. It also breeds arrogance. I know things these people did not know, therefore I am better than they were. They have nothing to teach me. In fact, I must teach them. And down comes the statue. And
Is he saying we leave the statues up as a assemblage of bad times?
New, better history must take
Maybe?
the place of the old one. In America, this impulse has culminated in the 1619
Is that a suggestion that we're
Project, an
rewriting
initiative
history?
Started by the New York Times.
I'm sure he
and
believes
now
that the
in
1619
schools
Project is a
everywhere,
rewriting of American
which
history.
attempts to make the arrival of the first African slaves into the American colonies the foundational date of the American Republic.
Not of the
1776,
Republic, of the
American
idea.
Revolution. In the new history, that was just about protecting the founders' slave interests. These men, some of the most
Well,
remarkable humans
like I
that
said,
lived
I don't
in
like the
any
1619
time,
Project.
are to be understood simply by their attitude towards this one issue. The 1619 Project seeks to portray America, the freest, most prosperous nation in world history, as exceptional only in one respect, insofar as being exceptionally bad. This
Exceptionally,
is a purposefully destructive
misguided
view of
in the past,
history.
right?
It is one intended to pull down rather than to build up. A healthy, humane, and in the truest sense liberal mind.
So what's the
does not
alternative?
view-
So what's the alternative? We shouldn't teach this? Because I know that they shouldn't be saying that. I mean, they probably believe it in private, but they shouldn't be saying that in public. I really hope not, but
sense liberal mind does not view history as a mere playpen for our moral judgment. It recognizes that people in the past
We're
acted
always,
on the information
like-
they had just as we do today.
we're always comparing like to the time, but we're also keeping in mind like the historical context for like these type of dynamics.
Sure, it would have been nice if the founders of America had abolished slavery in its constitution. Some, in fact, tried very hard to do so. But had they been unwilling to compromise, there would be no constitution and no United States. All the sacrifices of the revolution would have been lost. So a compromise balancing the interests of the northern states and the southern states was reached. It would have been nice.
I'm
if
gonna
the
end up arguing with
Japanese
the 1619 Project here. Hold on.
in fact tried very hard to do so. But
I need
had
to
they
go right for
that people in the past acted on the information they had just as we do today? Sure, it
Right.
would have been nice if the founders of America had abolished slavery in its constitution. Some, in fact, tried very hard to do so. But had they been unwilling to compromise, they would
Tried very hard to do so. What? Talking about Benjamin Franklin trying to get it. Was it Benjamin Franklin that wanted the part added? Who was it? Who tried adding a condemnation of slavery in the Constitution? I think it was probably Franklin. Oh, Jefferson. It was Jefferson. That's right. Wait, did Franklin even write? Did Franklin even write the? Was he? Okay. So it was his it was his baby. Oh wait. Oh no. It was Thomas Jefferson is the primary author. Okay.
And
Wait, what was my point there? What did I even Google? What the fuck was that for? I
no
don't know.
United States. All the sacrifices of the revolution would have been lost.
Where the
So
fuck is my
a
torch?
compromise balancing the interests of the northern states and the southern states.
Sorry if
was
this is
reached.
loud.
It would have been nice if the Japanese had surrendered before atom bombs were dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They didn't. President Truman had to make his decision based on the information he had at the time that an Allied invasion of the Japanese home island would cost at least 1 million lives of American and Japanese. Of course, the woke mind abhors these subtleties. It
Just
knows
punched the fuck
that
out my
it is
monitor.
right, and that everybody before our current age, year zero, should have known better. Anyway, they were all bigots. Why should we give them any benefit of the doubt, let alone admire them or learn from them? Well, maybe because, like everyone else, the great figures of the past did the best they could under the circumstances in which one else
That's
could
absolutely
admire
correct.
them.
Hold on.
They were
I
all
have something to
for
say.
our current age, year zero, should have known better. Anyway, they were all bigots. Why should we give information he had at the time that an Allied invasion of the Japanese home island would cost at least 1 million.
Okay, I don't know. I want to
Truman
nitpick this just
dropped
because
over-
I'm sure they
It
say
would have
something
been
wrong here.
nice
And I
if
actually do know a good
Japanese
bit
had
here.
surrendered before atom bombs were dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they didn't. President Truman had to make his decision based on the information he had at the time, that an Allied invasion of the Japanese home island would cost at least 1 million lives, both American and Japanese.
That he was also told wasn't necessary. At this time, I mean, even Eisenhower at the time was saying that we probably didn't even need on-land campaign of the Japanese islands to end the
should
war.
have known better. Anyway, they were all
The steel man is that the bombs didn't fucking matter. They were gonna surrender regardless of the bombs. The bombs just gave them like ammunition to like point at the U.S. and be like, "Oh, look how terrible they are," even though they just raped Nanking, right? But no, the bombs they're not necessary at all. And anybody that tries to tell you differently just doesn't know the history of that, like how the Japanese surrendered. Like it is specifically because Russia declared war against them. They were holding out the whole time, hoping that Russia, because of their shared defense treaty or whatever it was at the time, shared alliance or whatever, would come to the aid to fight the U.S. But that was never going to happen. And when they declared war, that's when they actually surrendered. Not because it was 3 days after the second bomb, right? August 6th, and then they surrendered on the 9th. I'm always so bad at these 3 dates. When did Japanese surrender? I think it was the 9th. Oh, no, it was it was September, not even the... Wait, is it way after then? Hold on. I thought the atom bombs were in August. Atom bombs dropped. No, maybe it was. No, it was, yeah, August 6th and 9th. Damn, so it was a whole month after. Where the fuck did this idea even come from? What? I just told you I was informed on this issue, but I had no idea that they even surrendered that late. I genuinely thought it was like a couple days after we dropped the second bomb, and that's kind of where that idea came from. I guess I never even bothered to look into that part, but yeah, I don't even know where the idea came from now. Yeah, the atom bomb, I mean, it did something, but it didn't make them surrender.
Largely succeeded is why we are here. When someone tried to give Sir Isaac Newton credit for his world-changing discoveries in physics, the great man demurred. He said he was only able to achieve what he did by standing on the shoulders of the giants who went before him.
Mm-hmm.
Today's left rejects Newton's humility.
But that's not what that's about. That's not what that's about. The analogy would be fair there if breaking down the statue was somehow like erasing, like if we were burning the books with this along with it, that would be fair. But like, that's not what's happening. Like, no, we don't disagree with this sentiment. I agree with this sentiment, and I want a lot of these statues like taken down. I mean, a lot of them have came down now, but like, I'm in favor of a community deciding if they want to keep a statue and whether or not it represents them.
He was only able to achieve
I don't like just want people to take statues down, but like if they want to take it down, I'm fine with that. All right, let's go back just a little bit.
Well, maybe because, like everyone else, the great figures of the past did the best they could under the circumstances.
Bro, he said that so many times. We know that, and that is true. We all know that. Anybody that like studies history knows that like you cannot use modern equivalents or modern like experience to judge the past. Like they obviously.
He said he was only able to achieve what he did.
But the people advocating for these statues being taken down don't disagree that like we learn from even the bad people. Like we study Hitler in school.
It doesn't believe that we stand on anyone's shoulders.
We study the fuck out of that in psychology. Like we care about that event specifically a lot in terms of like war periods, because like that gives us a big insight into like what can really go wrong with a normal person.
Is wrong. Divorced from our past, we would be utterly lost. We would not rise, but plummet.
No one's advocating for a divorce from the past, right? No one's saying that 1776 doesn't represent the founding of the country. We're just saying that the idea of America kind of started when we brought the slaves over, because America was initially built off of slave labor, in the South especially. But like during the wars, like who were building the railroads? I mean, it was definitely not only black people, but like who were building the railroads? I mean, I'm pretty sure at the time it was like what, like a lot of Irish people were it was like an Irish stereotype to be working on the railroads at this time, or I remember a little bit about it in American history in high school or whatever, but yeah, like I know that slaves 100%, slave labor was 100% used in a lot of the Civil War railroad building, even in the North.
What's happening in our schools? Colleges have become leftist indoctrination centers. It's not a new problem. It's been going on for decades.
Now it's a
First
woman.
behind the scenes and now out front. That's how radical change happens. It creeps up.
Almost as bad as British.
And when we finally figure out what's going on, it's too late. What's been happening on college campuses is now happening in elementary schools
What's been happening?
and high schools.
Recently?
I know. I'm a mom of 2 school-aged kids.
Please tell
I've
me.
seen it with my own eyes.
Please tell me she's a homesteader, guys. Please tell me she's a homeschooler.
More and more parents are seeing it too.
God.
Thanks to the lockdowns and Zoom, we're getting a window into our children's classes. It's not a pretty picture. Kids, really young kids, are being taught stuff so radical, so devoid of what real education is, it should alarm us all. Here are a few examples.
All right, let's
Recently,
see what examples
Chicago
we got.
Public Schools adopted an American history curriculum based on the 1619 Project published and promoted by the New York Times. The 1619 Project asserts that America's founding was not marked by the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but the arrival
No
of
one's
the
saying it
first
doesn't matter.
African
No one's
slaves
saying it
in
doesn't matter.
Jamestown in 1619. Historians from across the political spectrum have denounced this as a giant lie. The New York Times has walked back.
What
many
is
of
a
the project.
lie about that? How is that a lie? Are you saying that, are you asking the question like, was America founded in 1619? Obviously not. So how is this a lie? They're just saying that like this idea of America kind of did start when we started bringing slaves over, because slavery was how we built this country in a lot of ways. Like, I don't understand how that's hard to understand.
Still,
Well, I mean, I know, I'm
slander of America
acting like
is
they
now
should
being
know
taught
better,
in
but I know
schools
exactly. I mean,
as
these people are
truth.
paid to do this, right?
And what is that truth? That
I'm not
America
ignorant.
is,
I know
was,
exactly
and
what I'm
always has
watching.
been a fundamentally racist country, and that
It's just
white
like, how does the
Americans
average
today
viewer not
bear
have these thoughts?
responsibility for all current
Sorry,
and
I'm yapping right now
That's
because this woman is really
This
triggering me,
malicious slander
but
of America is now
I'm just
being
kidding, I'm not
taught in
triggered.
schools
just
as
kidding, I am
truth.
triggered.
And what is that truth? That America is, was, and always has been a fundamentally racist country, and that white Americans today bear responsibility for all current and historical.
Wait, what was I saying?
Americans today bear responsibility for all current and historic racism. This bleeds perfectly into another educational debacle. Diversity.
Alright, so, I got a caveat, a couple things here. I'm from North Carolina. I'm in the South. I'm a redneck for the most part. You might hear it in my voice a little bit. I'm not really a redneck, but I'm essentially a redneck compared to most of y'all people, right? So, take with that what you will. I'm obviously speaking from a biased place because I'm surrounded by conservatives. There's nothing around me but conservatives, right? So, and, you know, we got like a different education system down here that's, you know, passed down through ages. And while it's basically the same, there's definitely things that are left out in certain curriculums through in different states and whatnot. The reason I'm caveating all this is to say that, like, I don't know what it's to say, but let's just get into the 2 points that we're focusing on here. So, is America racist? So, what do we mean by saying, like, is America racist? We're not saying that the country, like, opens up land and swallows black people, right? They don't, like, send black people to the molten core or anything like that, right? So, the country itself does not use slurs. It's not, you know what I'm saying? The country itself is not racist. So what do we mean by that? We mean, well, I'm gonna give what they are trying to say. What they are saying. Wait, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. I need to be resparked.
This bleeds perfectly into another education.
Oh, what they're saying that we're saying is that people in this country, specifically white people, cannot be separated or cannot themselves separate from the conscious like racial elements in this country. That's basically what they're saying. We're saying. What we're saying is that whole like 206 roles in Monopoly kind of idea. Like they didn't have a fair shake, and there was 40 acres and a mule promised, and nothing was ever delivered. There's never been any. I mean, there's definitely been like we've got like affirmative action. I'm not saying there's been no effort taken to resolve these issues, but there has been no like economic reparations. So how do you expect someone to build economic or generational wealth? Is that the right term? Generational wealth to pass down to their kids, to pass down to their kids, to pass down. So like, why is it that like, why do you think that like black people in this country tend to be on the lower income ladder? Like, why is that? Is it because they just make poor life choices? Now, PragerU might have you believe that, but any reasonable person knows that like that can't be the case. It can't be the case that like are they saying that like black people inherently make worse decisions? Is that their argument? Because obviously that's ridiculous. Like we know that that's not the case. Like it would be a massive coincidence that every single instance of this was all because they're just making they're making poor decisions, right? Like that's just not how like these trends work in society.
Now this might sound innocent, but don't be fooled.
Oh, we're not done. That was one point. One point. White Americans today bear responsibility, right? And that kind of hits back, I will touch on this a little bit, hits back to like the anti-racist thing. And it's like, we're not saying that, and I say we, I don't speak for like the left. The reason I caveated that I'm from the South, I remember my point now with that, is because like, while I'm a liberal and while I'm a leftist, whatever you want to call me, I'm a capitalist, and I'm also like a redneck from the South, so I'm not like super left. You know what I'm saying? So I don't speak. There's crazy white left people out here. There's crazy liberals online. So I know when we are saying, I'm not speaking for all of them. I'm speaking for like people like me that like are like, I'm not gonna say like a neoliberal or anything like that, but like a like just classical liberal. I don't know how to describe myself, but basically what I'm saying is, when I say what we are saying, I'm talking about people like me that are arguing in good faith and genuinely care about these issues and like engage in politics and like all this, right? So what we're saying by white Americans today bear responsibility, and I'm not even saying I say that. I don't even think that you don't have any responsibility. But what I will say you do have a responsibility to do, if nothing else, is that anti-racist thing, right? It's that if you have friends that make racist jokes, that's one thing. But if you have someone that is bullying somebody, or like, y'all going to a restaurant and like, oh, I'm not going to tip that server because he's black. Or like, oh, like, like, of course he ain't been out here to give me drinks because he's, probably smoking in the bed. Like, like, if people like in your life are making these type of statements and it's clearly not a joke, or if it's like just constant, even if it's jokes constantly, like, you should probably check them. That's all we're saying with that. It's like, you should not feel guilty for like being a white person in America, but you also should feel like a responsibility to at least stand up for the people around you.
The very fabric of American society. What does this look like in a school setting? Middle and high school students in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
57 minutes. This is gonna be massive. How long do I got on this video? Fuck me. Yeah, I'm not gonna make it through. I'm having fun with this though.
We need your help. An email to students reads, "Your school leaders will be working with you this year on how to be proactive about preventing bias incidents and how to report them should they occur." This warped vision of America doesn't stop at race. In Colorado, first graders are being taught that just because someone looks like a boy doesn't mean they are. Only they can know who they truly are. Gender is something they choose for themselves.
Alright, so what do we actually think like that discussion look like? Do we genuinely think that they were like, okay, so some people might look like a girl, but deep down they've actually gone through surgery and they've got their dick chopped off and now they actually have a vagina? Or I don't even think I'm logically staying in the confines of my joke here, but clearly what probably happened, let's just use Occam's razor here. It's probably the case that like, if someone's wearing pink, it might not, and it's like got like long hair, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a guy. Like, kids make so wild, like just say what they're thinking. Like, could it not just be the case that it's like, like a bald-headed or like a short-haired girl that like is mistaken for a boy, or like a long-haired girl that's mistaken, long-haired boy mistaken for a girl, and a short-haired girl mistaken for a boy? Like, could that not just be what they're referring to there? Does it have to necessarily refer to like a sexual aspect to that? Like, are they going to go in depth?
Based
Probably
on
not.
how
I know, like,
masculine or feminine they
but
feel. Or maybe they're not fully a boy or a girl.
right. Oh,
something in
okay.
between.
So even then, so they're saying like, oh, like it's okay. Like if you want to play, like I remember in preschool. Now, am I snitching on myself a little bit? Maybe a little bit, right? But when I was in preschool, we had a bunch of different toys when you'd walk in. Like, right? You'd walk in and you see like I was gonna name a bunch of toys. I don't even know, a bunch of random stuff like building toys, like doll houses, like cars, like all kinds of toys that you can think of for kids, right? Because it was like underneath a church, like like the South preschools, like type shit. It's like locally owned or whatever, and yeah, I was in there playing with Barbies, right? I was playing with a dollhouse, right? Does that make me a girl? I mean, I might be a little like, you know, feminine sometimes, but nah, but for real. Why is it necessarily the case that this is like a sexual aspect? Could it not just be the case as like, oh, like, you know, he likes to play with like dolls, like that's fine, like, and she likes to play with monster trucks, like that's cool. Like that doesn't mean that you're like a guy. That don't mean you should like make fun of them, little first grader, because you only see boys playing with monster trucks, and so you should go bully the girl for playing with a monster truck. But like,
and they feel, or maybe they're not fully a boy or a girl, but something in between, whatever that may be.
A tomboy.
That's what children are taught.
Tomboy. Y'all not from the South.
Imagine what they're taught in 2nd or 3rd grade. And, of course, the world faces imminent disaster from global warming. The American Federation of Teachers has fully endorsed the most radical aspects of the Green New Deal, which is already featured in California school curriculums. In sum, many of our schools are teaching children that our past is terrible and that they have no future.
Is that it? That we're just talking?
That if they are white, they are racist.
We're talking about climate change, so that means that we have no future. That we're doomsday. Who's the doomsdayers? Who the fuck are the doomsdayers? In this,
they know it or not.
In this dichotomy
They're
here.
victims, whether they experience it or not. That they should constantly question their sexual identity.
Are these
With
real?
all this being drummed into their heads,
I don't think so.
No
I think
wonder
that editor
today's
just had
kids
fun.
have more psychological problems than any previous generation. Maybe you think I'm cherry-picking examples to exaggerate my point. Or maybe you're one of the lucky ones who sends your kids to a school that has yet to be infected by this radical agenda. Maybe. But if I were you, I wouldn't take it on faith. Find out for yourself. When I did, I was shocked to learn that all of this is happening in my school district right now.
Wait, what?
Which is already featured in. If I were you, I wouldn't take it on faith. Find out for yourself. When I did, I was shocked to learn that
Find out what?
all of this is happening in my school district.
Oh, did she like, what did she
right
spy?
now. So find out what's being taught in your kid's school. Take a good hard look at curricula. Ask administrators if they endorse the 1619 project. Are they pushing a diversity?
If you walk into your child's school and you walk up to the administrator and ask them if they endorse the 1619 project, they're gonna look at you like you're speaking Spanish. Like, let's be real here. Especially down here in North Carolina.
So, demand to see what materials the school is using. At a minimum, get to know your kids' teachers and principals.
I think that's a general rule of thumb that everyone should follow. You should know who is teaching your kids. No one disagrees with that.
School board meetings. Look for
Right.
allies among
I agree with all
like-minded
this. I think you
parents.
should be very
You don't
active
have
in
to
your
agree with
school,
each other
like,
on
or your
everything.
children's
You
schools.
just have to agree that the brainwashing of our children stops
But
here.
not for the reason that they're going to tell you.
Stops now. Americans know what our
Did she
children
just
should
change
do.
the stop sign?
Here. Stops
Oh, she just used it.
now.
Sure.
Americans know what our children should be learning. That they must take responsibility for their conduct. That race is the least important aspect of another person. That hard work and rational thought are things we all value. That there is nothing wrong with the bodies they were born into. And that America was founded not to promote racism, but to guarantee sacred liberties and opportunities to its citizens. And it wouldn't hurt if they learned reading and writing and math, too. I'm Jill Simonian, founder of thefabmom.com for Prager University.
Well, that went as a.
Hey, I'm Jordan.
I just had a stroke. That went about as well as it possibly could have, I think. There we go. Is that my cat? Where'd she go?
Into Yale last year.
Fuck off.
He had pretty bad grades and a bad.
Alright, I don't know how long I'm gonna
SAT
be on
score.
here. This is rough.
Have you heard about critical race theory? I'm guessing you probably have.
Bro, I need to put a pin
It has
on
already
that.
insinuated itself
You
into
see
many
it?
institutions and is making rapid progress into others. If it takes hold, it will completely change the very nature of
Wait, what are we
America
talking about?
and the way you live. Critical race theory holds that the
Oh,
most important thing
CRT,
about
baby.
you is your race. The color of your skin, that's who you are. Not your behavior, not your values, not your environment. Your race. In critical race
Oh,
theory,
God.
if you are a member of a minoritized racial group, their term, not mine, you are a victim of a system that is rigged against you, a system that doesn't want you to succeed. On the other hand, if your race is privileged,
Bro, I don't even know, like, what even to say here. Like, everybody that knows anything knows that this is, like, just silly.
you're an exploiter.
Intersectionalism is saying the color of your skin is who you are. What?
Whether you intend to be or not. Critical race theory begins from the assumption that racism occurs in all interactions. To see how this works, consider
Not
this
that,
thought
like,
experiment.
not that
Imagine you own a shop
racism,
and two customers
but
enter at
everybody
the same
has a
time,
bias
one
to a
white
certain
and
extent.
one black. Who do you help first? If you help the
Oh,
black
no,
person
I've seen
first,
this
critical
video.
Race theory would say you did so because you don't trust black people to be
Oh
left
my
alone in your
God.
store. That's racist.
Oh my
you
God,
help the
bro.
white person
If
first
anyone ever has
instead,
made that
critical
argument,
race theory would say you did
strike
so
me
because you
down,
think
Lord,
blacks are
but
second-class
I don't believe it.
citizens. That's racist too. That's critical race theory. It can find racism in anything, even if it has to read your
I'm
mind.
still
to
alive,
do
so
it.
it must be true.
Critical race theory is a uniquely American invention. Brewed up
It
at
must be
Harvard
true,
Law
that's a
School
lie.
in the 70s, now part of the academic and media mainstream, it is also uniquely un-American because it rejects the core tenets of the American classically liberal Judeo-Christian
Tenets?
value system.
Is that how you spell tenets? Did I just learn something new? What? I thought it was tenant. Ah, so it is. Wow. Bro, how did I not know this? That is crazy. I was like, that looks
It
so
turns a
weird.
bedrock American idea upside down. Here it is in the words of Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanchik, two leading proponents. Critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and the neutral principles of constitutional law. It does this because critical race theory proponents assume racism is present everywhere and always, and they look for it critically until they find it. And they always find it. It has to be there because that's how the imperial European powers and then America set things up. Here, as in all dangerous acts, and then find it.
Let's see it again.
It has to be there until they assume racism. It does this because critical race theory proponents
Like, I just don't got
assume
anything to say.
racism is present everywhere and always, and they look for it critically until they find it. And they always
Is that what critical theory is?
find it. It has to be there because that's how the imperial European powers and then America set things up. Here, as in all dangerous academic theories,
I don't
there is
care.
a kernel of truth. Human beings were not preoccupied with race until the 16th century, when Europeans began to explore and then colonize other parts of the world.
Sure.
Drawing distinctions between the races reached its peak in the 19th century with the widespread use of
Eugenics.
slave labor in North
Oh.
and South America. No one denies this.
I mean, like a
But
scientific.
since then, the Western world,
fascination.
and most especially America, has spent a lot of time, money, and blood breaking free of its racist past.
Why do we
It's
keep
been a rocky
mentioning
road
how much
for
we've spent on getting rid of slaves?
Sure,
But not had
but
a
great
figure
progress
to
has been
that.
made. Critical race theory says all this progress is a mirage. Racism never died, never even faded a little bit. It just hid itself better.
No, that
Critical
okay,
race theory,
maybe maybe there we go a little bit. It's just transferring a little bit from explicit. We're getting rid of the because like people who are explicitly racist are implicitly racist too are like subconsciously racist as well, right? So the idea is like the explicit racism is like easier to police for sure, and is probably more damaging, or not, maybe not more damaging. It definitely there's a case to be made for both, but it's like more like just like socially taboo, I guess, like to be explicitly racist. So we've killed that, but what he's kind of getting at there is like now it's kind of transitioned to more, we've eliminated explicit bias, so now we're kind of trying to tackle like the implicit bias of like stuff like this, like, right?
Or is not a continuation of the civil rights movement. It is in fact a repudiation of it. To critical race theorists, Martin Luther King was both wrong and naive. White Americans can never judge blacks by the content of their character. They can only judge them, always unfavorably, consciously or unconsciously, by the color of their skin. Ironically, not since the Aryan obsession in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s, or South African apartheid in the second half of the 20th century, has the social movement been so obsessed with race. Critical race theory is then, in a very real sense, a counter-Americans in the second obsession by the color of their skin. Ironically, not since the Aryan obsession in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s, or South African apartheid in the second half of the 20th century, has a...
That's so funny to me that like
30s and 90s.
The Aryan obsession in the 1930s. Where did this Aryan obsession come from, dipshit? American eugenics! That's where it came from! Why are we leaving out slavery and American eugenics? We're talking about Aryan obsession?
South African apartheid in the second half of the 20th century has a
oh my god.
So obsessed with race. Critical race theory is then, in a very real sense, a counter-American revolution. But that's a positive, not a negative to those who subscribe to the theory.
Why is he so animated?
The American experiment was given a 400-year tryout, and it doesn't work. So let's scrap it. That's what they believe. Is that what you believe? I'm going to guess that most of you don't. So how do we stop critical
What do they
race
think is going to
theory
happen? That
before
we're
it
just going to
infects
bomb the
brains of too
U.S.
many
and then
decent Americans,
rebuild it?
especially young people, and turns us into something we have never been and shouldn't ever want to be?
I keep looking the wrong direction. I
answer
think
is
it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of funny to look away and then just talk bullshit because you see my fat ass nose.
Heads I win, tails you lose logic of this self-destructive America hate.
All right, I think this is gonna be the last video because we're already on an hour and 11 minutes.
Don't be bullied into thinking that you're racist when you know you're not. Or
I'm gonna
that
do this
you're a
more
victim
often though.
when
This
you
is
know
this
you're
is
not.
tight.
Defend yourself while you still can. I'm James Lindsay, founder of New Discourses.
I appreciate it,
from
James
Prager
Lindsay.
University.
You really creep me out though. You got a splash of maybe the tism. I don't know. That's all right. I do too. I think. All right, so that's gonna be it. I'll probably do more of these. This is fun. I don't know if I'm gonna cut this up or if I'm just gonna post the whole fucking thing on my channel, but if I do, don't take everything I'm saying here too seriously. I definitely believe in the things I believe in, but especially a lot of the memes I'll be making are definitely hyperbolic, right? So yeah, take everything I say with a grain of salt. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. And yeah, I appreciate everybody for watching, and I will see y'all next video.